What's up, snappers? DDDREWSKY here. Welcome back to the channel. We're gonna be looking at the brand new card, Frigga, to see if she's worth your precious resources. We're gonna be looking at her key synergies, counters, and some decks that I brewed for her. But wait, before we do that, please like the video, please subscribe to the channel. We're trying to reach 1,000 subs of the channel. I do weekly reviews of the brand new card in Marvel Snap, so hit that notification bell. You will not regret it. So now let's get back into it. So now the question is, who is Frigga? Let's take a look. So Frigga in Marvel Snap is a 3-cost, 3-powered card with an on-reveal ability to add a copy of the last card you played to your hand. So I think her ability is really cool, very interesting. It's like a Nico spell, but it's a guaranteed Nico spell. Again, you know that ability is very good in Marvel Snap, right? Getting a copy of a card is pretty good. All right, now let's look at some of the pros and cons about Frigga. Let's take a look. So the first pro about her is that she's a guaranteed Nico spell. We already know how strong Nico spell is in Marvel Snap, so her doing the same ability and it's guaranteed is really strong in Marvel Snap. Another pro about her is that copying card is strong. Again, just like I said, Nico's ability is amazing. Again, it gives you that flexibility of a card that you want to replay again. Another pro about her is that she's a potential surfer card. Of course, she's a 3-cost card, so we're going to be thinking about, potential decks that she could be working with Surfer. So she does, have some value there. And there might be a deck that I brewed that is a Surfer deck with her. Another pro about her is that she gives flexibility with your hand. So again, it doesn't mean that you have to play the copy card, but again, it could like throw off your opponent, right? They might think like, oh, they're going to play the copied card, right? So I think there's a lot of good mind games with her potentially. So now let's talk about the cons about her. So the card gets added to your hand. Again, it's not like it's discounted at all. It's kind of a little bit of a bummer that it doesn't discount it. But again, like that could potentially be a problem if you're running out of energy, right? So you have to think about that card that gets added. Again, you don't have any extra energy to play that card. Another con about her is that her power is low for a 3-cost card. On average, I would say for a 3-cost card, I would say a good amount is like maybe like 5 to 8 power for a 3-cost card. Just her ability itself is carrying her strength, but her power is very low. Another con about her is that she's a potential late draw dead card, right? Because usually you want to play her at least by turn 5, right? If you don't, then by turn 6, she doesn't really do much other than her 3 power. So that is a huge con about her. Another con about her is that you have to be careful about your hand size. Again, you don't want to get a duplicate of a card when your hand's already full. Again, hand management with this type of card is very important. All right, now let's take a look at some of the key synergies and counters for Frigga. Let's take a look. So one of the first key synergies for Frigga is anti-venom. I know I said to pass on anti-venom. I'm very sorry, but there is huge synergy with Frigga, right? So, you can obviously do anti-venom first and then throw down Frigga and then get a copy of the 0-cost card that you got from anti-venom, or there's other situations that you can do, that type of situation, right? Another key synergy is Quinjet. So if you have Quinjet, it will discount the copied card. And then of course I had to mention Silver Surfer. She is a 3-cost card. So there's a great potential synergy there as well. Now let's talk about the counters for Frigga. Of course, she's on reveal, so you want to be careful of Cosmo. Another counter is Master Mold, right? If your hand is jumbled from all the Sentinels, it could ruin your potential copy of getting a card with Frigga. And then Alioth isn't a counter. Of course, if they ramp him out early or ramp out the cloud early, then Frigga is not of use. All right, now let's take a look at some of the decks that I brewed for Frigga. I think they're pretty fun and competitive. Let's take a look. So the first deck that we have is called Silver Frigga. Of course, I had to build a Silver Surfer deck featuring Frigga. So the ideal goal of this deck is to throw down all your 3-cost cards and then ramp them up in power and just explode at the final turn. So for turn 1, of course, you could do Nova. Be careful of getting countered by like Armor or Killmonger if you have Nova on turn 1. And then for turn 2, you want to do Forge. And then for turn 3, you can follow it up with Brood. And then even for turn 4, you definitely want to run Absorbing Man after Brood, if you have that type of hand. Rogue is great as a counter, but more than likely you're going to be using her during the last few turns. Silver Surfer again is another great finisher at 3 costs. Frigga is amazing. It depends on your hand, on what you have in your hand. So you can copy, for example, like a Brood, Absorbing Man, even a Sebastian Shaw. It really depends on your situation, but most of these cards you can totally copy and get value of it. More than likely, you probably want to copy a 3-cost card. On the final turns, Killmonger is great. Hope Summers is great on curve as well. If you need, you can ramp out energy with her. She's amazing and super underrated. And even on turn 3, you can do Sebastian Shaw just to follow up with Forge. And then Absorbing Man's great if you need to replay the Silver Surfer. You need to replay Brood. There's so many different options with Absorbing Man. You can even copy the Killmonger with Absorbing Man. Gwenpool is a great value just to juice up any of the cards here, like Sebastian Shaw, the Brood, even Absorbing Man potentially. And then Sarah is a great discount card in Silver Surfer. She's just a classic staple in this deck. But yeah, cheating out the energy with Sarah and Hope Summers is amazing in this deck. Definitely try it out. So now let's look at the second list that I brewed for Frigga. So this deck is named Glorious Frigga. We're going to be bringing back the traditional Loki without Arishem. The ideal goal of this deck is to generate cards, make sure you protect them, and countering the meta. So for turn 1, you could do Quinjet or Kitty Pryde. Quinjet is preferred because, again, you'll get all the discounts for the card generation. Kitty Pryde is great with Athena. Their combo is amazing together. Loki is a great situational card depending on what they're playing. Make sure you are using Loki when the matchup is right, but if the matchup is not in your favor, then definitely don't run Loki. Shadow King is a great counter card. We already know, he resets the power of that lane to the original power, which is great. US Agent is great with power heavy deck that you're facing. Valentina is a great card. Again, she's a card generation card. A lot of people don't play her, but I think she works well in this list because there's Luke Cage here to protect the card that she generates, and she could potentially get synergy with Quinjet. And then with Frigga, of course, it depends on what you get from either the card generation or if you want another, Athena or Kitty. Again, it depends on your hand situation, but most of these cards, getting a duplicate is totally awesome. And then Luke Cage, just like I mentioned, is great to help protect your cards, especially if you're running US Agent or Valentina. Luke Cage is great. Red Guardian is great as just a counter for any of those crazy ongoing lists, especially like Iron Man or Mystique or anything that's like low in power. Agent Coulson is a GOAT, generating 4 or 5 cost cards and then discounting them with the Quinjet or even copying some of the cards with Frigga. Whatever Agent Coulson generates is great. And then of course Shang-Chi, one of the best counters in the game, destroying any of the big cards. This deck is really cool and fun. I think we need to bring back traditional Loki, so I'm definitely going to be trying out this one, and I hope you do too. So now let's look at the third and final list. So this list is called Toxic Frigga. So the ideal goal of this list is to afflict negative damage or negative power to your opponent and reap the benefits of them. So by turn 1, you probably want to do Silver Sable. Turn 2, you probably want to do Cable, just like steal a card, maybe copy it with Frigga. Hazmat, you probably want to save for like the later turns as well, like maybe 5 or 6. You definitely want to get more value the later the turns are. Hawkeye is great on curve as well on turn 2. Getting maybe a Toxic Arrow or getting ever arrows is really good value for this list. Shadow King is a great counter card. Again, you probably want to do him like near the final turns, just like Hazmat. US Agent is great as a counter card for all the big cards that you're facing against. Cosmo, again, is one of the best tech cards in the game. Cosmo, you want to do based on the situation, if you want to counter potentially a destroy deck or something early on, or you save Cosmo for like the later turns. Frigga on curve is great, or Frigga, depending on what the situation of your hand and the board, copying any of these cards would be amazing. Maybe like a Hazmat or something relatively cheap. Luke Cage is great as a protection for your own list, or again, based on the situation or locations, Luke Cage is amazing. For Anti-Venom, there is synergy with Frigga, just like I mentioned in the Synergies area. You can copy potentially the 0-cost card with Frigga, so there's definitely great synergy here as well. And then if Anti-Venom hits like Ajax, for example, or any of the other cards, it doesn't really matter because you do have Luke Cage to protect that card. And then Man-Thing is great to just counter all the low-cost cards that you could potentially be facing. And Ajax just reaps the value of this list because there's so much negative affliction that's happening. All right, now let's look at the spotlights that are featured with Frigga. Let's take a look. So Frigga is with Red Guardian and Copycat. Red Guardian is a Series 5, Copycat is a Series 5, and Frigga is Series 5. So if you want to get some new cards this week is amazing to use keys because they're all Series 5 cards. So Red Guardian, I would say he's amazing, very underrated, not really used that much, which is kind of crazy, especially with an ongoing meta that's happening. But he's an amazing tech card. If you don't have him, definitely go get him with keys or just get him in general. Copycat, I would say she's definitely a shell of her former self. She's not as good personally for me. When she first released, she was amazing, you know, stealing ability compared to now she's just copies the ability. So again, if you like that type of ability, then sure, go for it. But I would say she's probably a pass. I think she's not as good as before. So now let's talk about the spotlight variants. I'm not really huge on the Frigga variant. I think her shop variant for gold is much better. So I would say probably pass on that. For Red Guardian and Copycat, I would say their variants are actually pretty good. I like the Copycat, you know, flying away or, you know, dropping down and, you know, blasting her guns is pretty cool. The Red Guardian is great as well. If you don't have a variant for him, I think this one's actually really good because it's based on the MCU, which again is really awesome. Again, depending on your resources, make sure you use 4 keys. All right, now let's look at the star ratings that I gave for Frigga. So for competitive, I gave her a 4 out of 5 stars. I think she's gonna be pretty good, I would say, honestly. I think her ability is really, really good. Copying a card is very, very fun and awesome in Marvel Snap. For fun, I gave her a 2.5 stars. I think copying card is cool and all, but I don't know how much joy that really brings a lot of people. So I gave her a 2.5 stars just to be, you know, safe. For flexibility, I gave her a 2 star. I think she could fit in potentially certain decks, but I think eventually she'll find a home. But I know a lot of people are going to be throwing her in a lot of different decks, but we'll see. I think at the end of the day, she'll be pretty niche. For future changes, I gave her a 2.5 stars. Maybe she'll get buffed, honestly. I think her power is pretty weak for a 3-cost card, but I think her ability is pretty fair at her current cost. So now let's take a look at my final review of Frigga. Is she worth a snap or skip? Let's take a look. So I say snap on her. I think her ability is very unique and very cool in the game, especially if you don't have Nico. Copying a card is pretty strong in Marvel Snap. So I think her new cost and power is great as well. She used to be, I believe, a 4-cost card. So, you know, seeing her at a 3 is great. So now let me know your thoughts on Frigga. What do you think about her synergies, her decks that she could be in? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't yet, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. We're trying to reach 1,000 subs of the channel, so I would love for you to be a part of it. I'll see you guys on the next Snap or Skip. Happy snapping.